They say when you reach a milestone, not only in life, but also whatever you may do, it's always good to reflect. It's always good to reflect. We did that in our first episode with former Mountaineer standout Joe Mazzulla. And I thought, okay, it's 100 episodes. I've had a lot of great criticism, a lot of great feedback from all previous episodes leading up to this episode as well. And I thought, let's do something special, shall we? Let's go back in time. I always like to mention Back to the Future in the '85 DeLorean with Doc and Marty McFly and all those guys, but let's go back in time. I love doing guests like these. Love going back in time as well. And this one's going to be a good one. I have a great feeling about this one. We're going to be joined by a West Virginia legend, I think as some people like to call him. But let's get right into his bio because again, his bio, like everybody else's, is just absolutely amazing. You know, when you look at his career, he played at Northfork High School and he won a state championship all 4 years that he was in high school. Let me say that again. He won a state title all 4 years. Very rare company. He averaged 22 points as a junior, 21 points as a senior at Northfork, played under Jennings Boyd as well. He hauled in 15 rebounds his junior and senior seasons, and he obviously earned numerous prep honors while at Northfork as well. He eventually went on to play at WVU, where he was coached by Coach Gale Catlett. So he played from 1980 to 1979 to 1983. And man, he was on some great teams, including, we will touch on this, including the team that defeated number 1 UNLV at the WVU Coliseum. So we'll talk about that as well. Went on to play professionally overseas in Sweden, where he is still to this day. And we are pleased to be joined. Let me say it again. We are pleased to be joined by Northfork, one of Northfork's greatest players of all time, Mr. Russel Todd from across the Great Pond. Russell, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
How's everything been for you? I mean, I know, basketball has always impacted your life, but how's life been treating you lately?
Well, I can't complain. I've been very fortunate to come from a small town and to end up overseas. Yeah, that's a long ways. Come from like a town of maybe 1,000 people, and to come to another country and to be speaking another language too. On top of it.
Hold on, you speak Swedish?
Yes.
Oh, we got to start there. We have to start there. You got to give me some Swedish, like some words. You got. Give me a sentence in Swedish.
Vad heter du?
What does that mean?
That means what is your name?
Oh, that's awesome. I don't know. I don't know Swedish, so this is going to be great. If you want to talk Swedish at any point in this, I give you full reign. You do whatever you want to. This is awesome. But thank you again for joining me.
We can keep it on English. I'm speaking enough Swedish as it is. It's nice to speak my own language.
Okay.
I speak it every day in the school system.
Well, that's fair. Well, let's start there before we talk about your time over here in the States at West Virginia. Let's start with what's going on now. For people that don't know, what is Russel Todd doing today? For people that don't know, what are you up to today? What's life been like for you lately? Just walk us through that.
Well, life has been, like I said, I've been very fortunate to get the opportunity, first of all, to come to Sweden and play professional basketball from the beginning. But once my career was over with, I said, what am I going to do? I have to do something. I'm going to go back to the States, but I haven't been here too long to like to go back to the States and start over. Then I said, well, I have to learn the language if I'm going to like be able to stay and integrate into the society. So I went to school and I started learning Swedish that way. And then I started working, with only people who spoke Swedish. So I didn't have a choice. I had to speak Swedish all the time. But then it started just coming automatically after a while. And plus, I'm married to a Swedish woman too.
Yeah. So it seems like Sweden has completely changed your life, it seems like.
Yeah, it has.
So,
and before that, I was in Finland before I came to Sweden.
Wow. Now, have you gone? Go ahead.
I played over there right after I got drafted by Milwaukee, and then things didn't work out there. So I was in Helsinki, Finland for a while.
Now, I got to ask, have you been backpacking in Europe before? Like, have you just left home and be like, honey, I'll be back. I'm going to go tour Europe. I'm going to go backpacking. Let me do my thing.
No, I have not never really done that. It's like hopping a plane. When I was playing with the club, where you went to different countries and played against different club teams.
Well, don't spoil the professional side. We're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to
Yeah.
that. But before we before we start talking about North Fork and everything else in that area, but what's COVID been like for you? I know COVID's impacted a lot of different people, especially here in the United States. But I'm curious. You're my first interview I've done on this podcast from a former player that played in West Virginia, now overseas, that's still overseas. What's COVID been like these last few years for you and your family?
It's been tough. It's been really tough. You have to like change your whole way of living. You know, it's like basically it's like being in prison in some type of way. You're limited in what you can do, and you got to be suspicious of your surroundings. What's going on every day. Because it changes all the time. It's not the same, and the fact that this hits very close to home. With this disease, you don't know who has it or who doesn't have it because it affects us in different types of ways. And I've been very lucky. I've had it myself. And I've been lucky, just to lose my taste and my sense of smell. And my wife also has had it. So we've been fortunately, to be able to just have mild symptoms and to be able to tell about it.
That's interesting, just because I feel like again people tackle or well, they are continuing to tackle this disease in different ways and everything else. So that's interesting that you brought up just what life is like internationally, just because you are right. There to a certain extent, people do feel like they are in jail or they just feel trapped at certain points. So that's interesting you brought that up. But you know when you look at how it's affecting your job, could you go a little bit more into description on how it's been different at your work life?
Well, I work as a school teacher, and and I work very close with the students. So you like you try to keep distance, but it's kind of hard to do that in the school system because you have to be very close to the kids, and it's been very tough. It's been very tough because right now, a lot of my colleagues they've gotten COVID, so it's like it's a challenge every day. When I go to work, okay, who's here? Who doesn't have it? What are we going to do? So you got to be very flexible and how you live and how you teach and everything.
I'll sprinkle a little basketball into this next question. And when you look at how you've been able to deal with COVID these last few years, do you think this is the biggest mountain you've had to climb? I mean, obviously dealing with numerous opponents down at North Fork, and then, like I said, going up against number one UNLV. Is this the hardest thing you've had to deal with?
Yes, it has, because we're all affected by this, whether we want to like admit it to ourselves or not. It doesn't matter where you live. Doesn't matter what language you speak, what color you are, where you come from. We're all affected by this. We have to try to do our part. Hopefully, we can try to get this under control. So we have to learn to live with this.
I agree. I really do agree with you. Well, enough negativity. Let's get to some fun stuff. Okay. We didn't come on here to talk COVID. We weren't here to talk negative. We were here to talk some hoops. That's why we're here. That's why this podcast exists. That's why it's been so successful and been able to reach 100 episodes. So let's talk some hoops. And Russell, I'll lead with this question talking about basketball in the North Fork area. Growing up, take me back in time to whenever you were just a young kid trying to understand what basketball was like, how much of an impact it would have on your life. What was basketball like in the community in North Fork growing up?
Yeah, it was unbelievable to really. It's sort of hard to really describe it. You have to be a part of it. You have to be in it yourself. But just looking back on that and thinking about it, yeah, it was like there was just basketball. That was it. It was like every day. It doesn't matter what time of the day it was. It was about, especially when I went to high school. It was like the Blue Demons, the Blue Demons, the Blue Demons. It's like, okay, when are they playing? Okay, or are they out of town? Where are they going? And then we had always a following, with us wherever we went, which was crazy, to think a small school that I played at, and it has such a big following, And it was not only the young people, the older people too, as well, was a part of this. And the community, it was like, it's kind of hard to really describe it. It was like you were like flying, it's like, because everybody around knew who you were. And it was always, how you doing? What about the team? All this stuff like this, you guys, we're pulling for you. It's like, it was just positive. It was nothing ever negative. We always, felt loved, and it was genuine. It wasn't something that was just made up. It really came from the hearts of the people, and not only just in Northfork, in the surrounding communities that supported the Blue Demons.
That's awesome you brought that up, just because I think that can still be replicated today, just because even though times have changed, athletics, especially high school athletics, has definitely impacted communities in different ways. So that's interesting bringing up a town like Northfork that was so successful during the 70s and early 80s as well. So that's a very good point that you brought up. When you look at how you first started in basketball, I know that's a very generic question, but I'm curious, when did basketball first become, a true thought where you actually put a lot of time and effort into it? When did that start happening for you?
It started happening in the fifth grade. Yeah, when we started playing. I remember one of the first games that we played against a team was called Coldwood, and they had some really good players. That was on the other side of McDowell County, and that's when I got a taste of, okay, this is something that I really want to do. And and just also looking at my older brothers that played basketball too, because I always looked up to them. My brother Scott and my brother Julius, they also played at Northfork at the time before me. So I had role models in the beginning, and that was a part of our culture as well, because my mother played basketball, and my uncles on my mom's side, they played basketball too. So it was something that was in me already.
That's awesome. I mean, it just seems like anytime a basketball's dribbling, a member of the Todd family is always there ready to play.
Exactly. That's how it was too. And not only just with my siblings, the fact that in the community itself, it was always like that.
I'm curious as to what your answer would be with this, because I've talked with a lot of former players like Warren Baker, Jimmy Miller from Princeton, my dad even. When you look at basketball in a community like Northfork, where were some very popular places to go play basketball while growing up?
Actually, it was just anywhere that we saw a basket. That's where we would play. Because we were like, even like during the school year, even when the season was over, well, we were like, okay, we're gonna play at this time at such and such place. So we were all like get in a car and we'd go there and we would play. Sometimes we would play against rival communities too, just for pickup.
Now I gotta ask, what's your most memorable playground basketball event, moment that ever happened to you? Because you mentioned how you guys went up against rival communities, so I'm curious if there's a story in there that we could probably wiggle out of you. What would that be?
It was when it was just basically where I come from. It's a little town called Mayberry, and there was a little, it was a place in the hollow, is what it's called Barlow, and they were always wanting to come and play against us. When we played on dirt and gravel. That's how our player came up. It wasn't no asphalt. That's how my basketball started. We played on dirt and gravel. That's how we
Wow.
learned how to dribble the basketball and all this stuff like that. And to be very focused. And so we always played because it was like the height between, oh yeah, who was better and all this stuff like this. Because they knew that my brother Scotty played, and plus myself was playing, and then a couple other guys in the same community where we come from. We played on the team, but most of those guys in the other community did not play on the team. So it was like we're trying to say, oh, we were just as good, but we didn't get the opportunity. That was a type of mentality, but it was all in fun. It was nothing ill will about anything. We had a good time. We played against each other, we competed. But once it was all over, we shook hands. That was it.
Now you mentioned how you guys got into a car and would travel around to different communities and go play playground basketball. Do you recall what the longest trip was that you guys went on just to go play some playground basketball?
It was probably maybe 15 miles.
Okay.
Yeah, it was about maybe 15 miles.
Now, you mentioned how you played with your brother some and your older brother as well, but let me ask you this. If you were to build your playground team back then, and you said, I need to call these four guys, because I'm obviously including myself, who would those other four guys be that you're like, hey, let's go play some basketball?
First of all, it would be my two brothers, and then it would be Anthony Harris and probably Wayne Carrington or Eugene Carrington.
That's awesome. This is great. I'm loving this already. This is gonna be great. So let's talk about high school basketball for you, because you mentioned how basketball became a lot more serious for you as you got into the fifth grade and on. You know, when you got to high school, I know that playing middle school compared to high school is two completely different concepts, but was there ever a moment where you're just like, I don't know if if basketball is truly for me? I mean, I know you mentioned how you came from a long lineage of basketball players, but I'm curious if that ever came in like the back of your mind and you're just like, I don't really know. I don't really know if this is for me. Did that ever happen for you?
Never came across my mind. I was always this is what I wanted to do. After the fifth grade, I'm going to play this. And my mother and father always told me, you know, you have to do good in school too, because if you don't, you can forget about basketball.
Mhm. Now, did you play any other sports growing up?
No, I didn't. They tried to get me to play football, but I said no, I'll stay away from that. I said I got to think about my knees. Basketball is my focus. Even though I wanted to play, but I said no. You got to be sensible too. You know, I was like starting to be pretty good in basketball too, and I did not want to mess that up. So I concentrated on basketball and plus my school work.
I like that. I like that. That's something similar that my mom says, because I wanted to play football my junior year of high school, and she's like, no, I don't want to get hurt for basketball and everything else. So I held off. So I understand where you're coming from. I do. But okay, so let's talk about this next stage in your life. Let's jump into high school basketball at Northfork under Coach Boyd. You know, looking back at that, let's start with a macro question. We'll slowly work our way down to a micro. But from a macro, you know, describe the culture that Coach Boyd established at Northfork. What was that like?
It was very interesting to think, especially my first year, and heard about it before I went to high school from my brother and plus, a couple of his teammates, the rules that Coach Boyd had, which I understood after a while why. Because if you want to be successful, you got to like sacrifice certain things in your life. And it takes a lot to do that, especially, being a young kid, in high school, you're still learning things. It's a process. But then I said, I want to win. And the only way to win, you have to do these things. It's not easy. Nothing in life is ever easy. It's always ups and downs. But you got to like make up your mind and say, hey, if it's going to be like this, I want to be a part of that. I have to do what it takes to be a part of that. And the fact is that we had curfew, and the fact that with girls, it was like you had to have your distance. And Coach Boyd, he always was like, he taught me math when I was in high school too. And he was like a very big part of the school. So he was always walking around the hallways and stuff like that, checking on us, and then plus all the other students too. Then at night, he can probably like he would drive around to the different communities that we lived in to see that we're home. He would toot the horn, and you have to come out and wave so he'll know you were at home and stuff like that. Which was like, you thought it was kind of hilarious in the beginning, but then you understood why. Because you can't burn the counter at both ends if you're going to try to be successful.
I like that. I like that. That needs to be that needs to be something like whenever you walk into a home and it says, "Welcome to my home." What you just said right there just needs to be like one of those things that you put up on the wall. I like that. I like that a lot. So that's interesting you brought that up. So looking at um students, I always feel like a student section or a school fan base as well is always pivotal in trying to bring success to a team because I feel like as a former athlete myself, myself and my team fed off the crowd. The crowd's energy was a big part in that. On a game day, what was that like? You know, being able to go through school, having a lot of, angst leading up to that big game. What was that like on a game day? Walk me through a game day. What was that like for you just going throughout school and just what was that like?
It was special. You can feel it in the air. It's totally different from all the other days. On game day, especially, okay, you got up and did your usual stuff. You go eat breakfast or whatever, and then you go to school for the most part, and then you come home. But during the school day, it was just basketball, talking about the game, what's going to happen, how many people are going to be there, what happened before, and the fact that the whole community was they were pumped, they were ready, and the fact that our student base too, they were always there, and it was like you were on a high that day because you knew, okay, all right, what you worked for those 2 or 3 days or maybe a week sometimes if you didn't play maybe one game in a week. All right, okay, this is the day. This is what you work for. This is all the sweat and tears you put into it. Now it's time to show it. And it was like you didn't need any other motivation. Because once it was time, once you came back after school and you walked into the gym, the people were already there. And then when they saw you, when you were like going into the class, to the changing room, it's like, we were already hyped up, and then to come out and start warming up, it was crazy. It's kind of hard to really describe, just looking back on it, it's like, wow. Just think that the gym that we played in, I think it seated maybe at the most 400 or 500. And that's why after a while we didn't play our home games there anymore. We started playing in Welch Armory or the Brushfork Armory, which was outside of Bluefield.
Hmm. How about that? How about that? So
Because they took more, so now we was playing in front of maybe like 2,000 people, if not more.
did you ever feel like rock stars throughout your time at high school? I mean, I know Northfork pretty much established themselves as a giant after winning, four straight before you got to high school. Walking in, if somebody knew that you played on the basketball team, did you sort of get treated like a rock star?
Well, we got certain privileges, but Coach Boyd always kept us landed. He kept us down. He brought us down to earth, which was good. Because otherwise we wouldn't have been as successful as we were. Because then it would got to our heads, and then then it becomes more of an individual, in which we're individuals, but we have to come together as a team. And all the teams that I played on, and the teams before that, and the teams after that, it was all about team play. Regardless of maybe one person or two people might have stood out, but it was about the team. You're only as good as your teammates. And I always knew that, I can't play this game by myself. I need four other guys with me on the court at the same time. We thinking the same and we doing the same for the good of the team. We want to win, and we do whatever to win. Whether if I didn't have to score or play defense instead or hustle, do other things, which is more important, for me at that time, because I knew I could score, but it wasn't like I was going to take 20 or 30 shots a game, because I wanted to get all my other teammates involved too. Because you can't do it on your own. Because I've seen it before, even before I started playing, where guys got the big head. Okay, they're scoring over 25 points a game or something like that, and then they forget about the team. Then I understand the team and say, we don't even need to be out there anymore because, it's like he's trying to do it all by himself, you know. And I never was like that. I've never been a selfish person. And I've always said, hey, this is a team game. That's why we're out there together. It's 5 against 5. It's not 1 against 5. And
You
Coach Boyd, he always emphasized that too, that, hey, we're only as good as each other. We got to participate together. We got to work hard together because we've done it all week in practice. Now you have the opportunity to show it, when it comes to game time. So Coach Boyd, I credit a lot to that because he was the one that kept us down to earth. And this is what you need to do. And you listen to him because that's how much respect we have for him. Not only as a coach, as a person too. He didn't care about us because we were athletes. He cared about us because we were people. He wanted us to succeed in life too.
Do you think growing up and playing so much playground basketball with the core group of guys that you started your freshman year with and ended with your senior year, do you think being able to just get out and play basketball consistently with one another, do you think that ultimately led to a lot of your guys' successful seasons?
I think it does because then you get to know each other in a different way too. And I think it helps out. It's not only when you come together as a team, it's like the stuff that you do outside, then you can rely on each other. I think it has it plays a very important role in how you can go to the next level too. Because if you had that in the beginning where you played we call it sandlot basketball at the time, where basically street basketball, what they call it now. And the fact that we've done that stuff, we played together. We knew what each other can do. And then we pushed each other even to higher levels, because we were never satisfied. We wanted more. And that's the only way to be successful, not only just in sports, in life. You just can't say, okay, just be satisfied with this. No. I want more. Even sometimes you don't reach it, but you try to strive for it.
It's interesting. I feel like that puts a lot of things more into perspective of I think how people need to approach not only sports but life even more. So I think that can be applied to more than one aspect of our day-to-day lives. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Looking at your freshman year, okay, I'll mention the same question when we get to the WVU portion of this podcast. But when you look at your freshman year, do you recall a game that served as your wake up moment that you just thought, okay, I gotta take this a lot more serious going up against guys like, whoever you guys played against during your regular season? Did that ever come up for you?
No, it didn't. It came up in practice. I'm playing against guys just as good as I am. So they were older than me too. And plus at the time they were stronger. And they encouraged me. It was like, being a younger guy, you don't have the same conditioning, because you haven't been there. They have been there and they know what to expect. I didn't really know what to expect because Coach Boyd, he was very disciplined when it came to stuff like that. You had to be in shape. And we pressed basically the whole time. So conditioning was a great factor. So we ran. And the fact that, myself being young, and certain things in your body it's not catching up at the same time because you're still young. And my older teammates, they kept encouraging me. And that's what I remember most about, especially when practice, when we were finished with the one-on-ones or the 5-on-5, stuff like that. Then it came down toward the end where we just ran. We ran. The Coach Boyd said, enough is enough. And which was crazy. I'll never forget the first practice after we did all the other stuff that I mentioned earlier. We would run laps and we would have to run up into the bleachers. He would stand on the floor. He would start close. Then he would start moving further and further away. So when he moved, we had to run around him and run back up into the bleachers and run the bleachers and run back down and do the same thing. We might do it 25 times the first day. Then the next practice, it could be 50. And that's how it was. But practice was harder than the games. Yes. We practiced hard. That's why we ended up being successful as we were. We knew what it took, and he knew what it took too. You have to be in shape physically in order to play the game. And it's the same thing with anything else in life. You have to be mentally too. And it's to see how tough we were. Are we going to quit? Or are we going to continue to fight through it? And we pushed each other. No one quit. We pushed each other. Because you can go a little bit further than you think you can. You think you have a limit. Everyone has a limit, but then at the same time, you can go a little bit extra too. So Coach Boyd, he was a very disciplined person. And I really thank him for that, because I wouldn't be where I'm at today either without him, plus my mother and father too, and my older sisters and brothers. So it was wild. It was like I said, the games were nothing compared to practice. Sure, the games were challenging because, you playing against different opponents and they were different, but the practice was very demanding, very demanding.
That's interesting.
2 hours of practice. It was like, but once it was over, well, hey, you did a good job. Hey, this is what we're working for. All the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into it. Game day is where it's going to pay off, which it did. We ended up winning championships.
You ended up winning a few. You won a few. I mean,
no, but
4 straight. I'm looking at these records right now, and just by doing the quick math, you guys only lost. Well, you as a player only lost 16 games in 4 years. In 4 years. I mean, that's unbelievable. I mean, your best season was in 1977 when you guys went 24-2. Now, I will say this. This is the part of the episode where we get a little bit more serious, because as Russell and I talked on the phone, I knew I needed to bring this up with him. So as a Winfield alumni, Russell had Winfield's number, beat him in 77 and 79, actually ruined, thank you very much, ruined Winfield's undefeated season whenever they were 25-0 playing against Russell and his team whenever they were 18-7 in the 79 championship game. Thank you very much, Russell. This podcast is now concluded since you have defeated, or you did defeat, my Winfield Generals. I appreciate that.
I didn't realize that you guys were undefeated until I think I mentioned to you when I talked to you the first time. That was over Christmas that I was into YouTube. Then all of a sudden I saw the 79 AA state championships from Morgantown, West Virginia. And then when the guy mentioned that Winfield was undefeated, now I recall back, I'm reflecting back, you guys were undefeated, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's stop with basketball real quick, because I think you just brought up a very important piece of our lives that I think continues to change rapidly, and that's technology. You had just mentioned how you were just simply scrolling through YouTube. You were scrolling through YouTube and you stumbled across the 79 championship game between the Blue Demons and the Generals. That's so interesting. So my question to you is, being able to be a part of so many championship teams and everything else, my question to you is this: if social media were to be around when Northfork was, very popular in not only West Virginia, but also in the United States, we'll get to that title here in a few minutes, but how big do you think Northfork would be if social media were around back in the 70s?
I think it would like escalated. I think it would maybe like 100 times more. Wow. Yeah, because that's what it is. That's what it's all about now. You think about it, how the world has changed because of social media. Because during that time, even before I was playing basketball, like we can go back when the NBA, it was never televised before at that time. And then it started coming, a little bit at a time. And to think where things are right now, not only with my sport, other sports in general too. It's crazy how, the times have changed from the black and whites to not just using a regular telephone. You have like a tablet in front of you and you can like just find a lot of information just like that. It's not like going to the library or whatever you used to do like years ago and trying to find information.
So other than
or
that,
read about it in the newspaper.
yeah, yeah. Other than that 79 championship game, what else did you stumble across? Because I guarantee you saw that and you're just like, well, if they got that game, what else do they have? So what else did you find whenever you were just getting lost on social on YouTube?
I saw Logan. I forget what team they were playing. It might have been could have been Beckley, or I forget what team it was. Then I saw the other Norfolk team, the last team that Coach Boyd coached before he retired, which they won basically at the buzzer, I think it was. I think that was 81. It could have been his last year,
Yeah,
if
81.
I'm
You
not
got
mistaken.
Norfolk defeated Dunbar 53-50. Yep, that could have been it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, yeah.
That's unreal. I mean, again, for what you just said, I mean, you were just simply just stumbling across YouTube. Lo and behold, you're like, I know that guy. I think
I was like, what?
you're like you were like, is that's me? This is awesome. So did you
I
watch
told
the
my
whole
wife,
game?
when I stumbled over it, my wife and I, we were like sitting upstairs, and we was like, she was on her tablet, looking at stuff, and I had mine, and we were like sitting on the bed, and I said, Christina, look, this is when I played my last year of high school basketball in the championships, and I said, wait a minute, God, I didn't even really recognize myself in the beginning. I said, hey, I had hair. Oh my God. How times have changed. It was like deja vu in some ways, to be able to see yourself, to be so young. And I said, wow, that was then started when I started watching the game, then I started remembering certain things. Okay, yeah, I remember this happened at that time. It was just crazy. That's been what, over 40 some years now. 42, going on 43 now.
That's awesome. I mean, it's crazy, but it's awesome at the same time. I mean, it really is. So,
And to be able to talk about it now, after so many years have gone by,
mhm.
which is unbelievable, to have the opportunities to be able to speak to you and know that I played against your team, the fact that, we won the game, it's not all about that sometimes. The fact that, when we played against teams, we have respect for them too. It's not like we're Norfolk, we're much better. We still have to play the game. And you can get beat if you don't come with your A game. And sometimes we did lose. Because the best team wasn't the teams that I played on. The best team was when my brother Scotty played on. They went undefeated the whole way.
Yeah, that's
And
crazy.
plus, and at the time, they had better players too. Even though my teammates were good too, but it was just a different time, when they played.
So before we talk about the recruiting aspect of getting to WVU, let's do some generic questions because again, people's answers are very different. So I'm curious for you, since you played in such a unique era of basketball here in the state of West Virginia, I'm curious as to what your answers would be whenever I ask you this. So when I ask you, where was the hardest place to play when your North Fork teams would march into where was the hardest place for you all to play?
Logan,
Wow, okay. How many times did you guys play Logan?
we played them more. I think we played each other once a year. It was like home, 1 year at their place and 1 year at our place. Logan was probably one of the toughest, which was one of the most challenging. You look for those type of challenges too, to go into a hostile environment, and to quiet the crowd. We did it sometime, and then sometimes we didn't, which was good. It was a good rivalry too, because they were triple A, we were only double A. And,
So, oh, go ahead.
and our schedule, we played basically triple A schools. We didn't play them in the double A schools. And I understood why we did it, because actually, it wasn't the fact that we were probably better schools, but the fact that, we had a better challenge getting us prepared for our state, for the championships. And that's how Coach Ward, that's how he worked it. Hey, you're going to go up and play against the best. We're going to see what you're made of. And he challenged us every time. And plus, when we're playing against teams like Williamson, Logan, Beckley, Bluefield, Princeton, Parkersburg, Wheeling, I think it was Wheeling, Martinsburg, all the schools. And, it what got us primed for when it was time for our sectionals and regionals, to play. That's what we worked for. Sure, you're going to take your bumps along the way, because that's how life is in general. You don't win everything. You got to be able to lose first before you can appreciate the winning aspect of it.
I like that. You're just coming with a lot of inspirational quotes today. I mean, whoever's writing out inspirational quotes for this podcast, you got to have at least 6. I mean, I'm not keeping track, but it's got to be right around there. But I'm loving this. So let's talk about how you mentioned traveling all around the state, going and playing at Logan whenever they had Willie Akers and a lot of those great teams with the running Wildcats as well. Looking at individual players, I know that teams can play a large part in that, but when you look at individual players, who always gave you the hardest, or always gave you the toughest matchup, I should say?
Alan Williams from Princeton, he was one. He was very good. He was actually a little bit taller than me. And I played against Earl Jones when he was at Mount Hope High School. Actually, we played them in the finals one year.
Mm-hmm.
And those two right there, they stick out the most because they were two of the heavily recruited ones too, along with myself. But then there was always other guys, that you played against. Because I remember we played against a team from Wyoming County, which was called Oceana.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys were like 6'5", weighing about 220 pounds or whatever like that. And actually, they played football too for the team. And this was the front line. And I was the tallest guy during that time, maybe 6'4", probably weighing about 190 pounds or something like that.
Oh my
But
goodness.
you look forward to those type of challenges. You like to test yourself. Hey, see where you're at. It's like a measuring stick. What do I need to do myself in order to get better too?
Such a great answer. Such a great answer. I mean, you mentioned the size of different players from Oceana. Unbelievable. They as well have since closed as well. But I want to go back to what you had said a few minutes ago. And that was going up against Class AAA opponents, since you all were AA during the time of your playing days at Northfork. But I'm curious, did you all ever feel like an underdog going up against a Class AAA opponent, since you guys were a lower class compared to a team like Logan that was so dominant in that class? Did you guys ever feel like an underdog in that situation?
No, we never did. We never did. We never did. And that's like I said, a part of contributor Coach Boyd. Not only Coach Boyd, Coach Wingfield, which was his assistant at the time too. No, we never thought that we were like underdogs. We had to play the game. They have to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
The ball bounces both ways. And it's how much, effort you put into it. Like I said earlier, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
So,
but it was always fun to be able to play against those type of teams, especially when they were supposed to be much better than the AA teams.
mm-hmm.
And the fact that, we didn't even look at it like that. We looked at you as a basketball team. We have to play, you have to play us. And the better team wins at the time.
Let's talk recruiting. And coming out of high school, you talked about just a few minutes ago about how heavily recruited you were coming out of Northfork. If you could just give us a little bit of a perspective, what was recruiting like back then, and how different is it compared to what goes on in today's society?
I think during that time when I was being recruited, it was like, it was crazy. It was like, how did they get my mom and dad's telephone number and to be calling? They didn't disrespect. They called it a decent hour, but the fact it was like, sometimes the phone was ringing constantly. But then, thank God, Coach Boyd, the teams, if they wanted to like talk to me or call me, then had to call the school instead of like, bothering my parents at home. So it was tough sometimes. It was like you get in mail, you get in letters, you read all this stuff like this, people calling, and want to like meet you or just want to talk to you on the telephone. Then I took a couple of visits. I think at that time you can take 4 or 5 visits to different schools. And I think I took 2, but I was going to take a third one, but then the weather was so bad that I didn't get to go. I was going to go down to Georgia Tech. I was down in Atlanta, Georgia. I went to SMU, which was in Dallas, Texas. And then, of course, I went to WVU, Morgantown.
So do you recall the first either phone call or interaction between you and Coach Gale Catlett?
Not really. I don't. I know I've received a lot of letters from WVU. But I think the first one was like, I think it was basically, I think it was with Coach Boyd. He talked to Coach Boyd, if I'm not mistaken. But then his assistants were like coming to see me play and stuff like that. And then they would maybe like talk to me after the game. It was like very short, but then he started coming to some of the games. And then it is crazy how everything ended up, because actually I wasn't thinking about going to WVU.
Excuse me?
I wasn't going to WVU. It wasn't one of my first choices. It was in my thought process. I said, yes, it would be nice to do this because it would be closer to home for my mom to be able to come and visit, and see me play, which was only maybe like 3.5 hours from where I come from. But I was thinking about maybe Maryland or Duke.
Wow.
Yeah, because I got offers from them too, plus UCLA.
Really?
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
So then you can correct me if I'm wrong when I say this, but it seemed like ultimately the choice came to WVU. That way your mother could travel to games. Am I correct
Well,
when I say that?
no, not only because of my mother, but then I start looking at the pros and cons of things. Because I was looking at the roster at Duke, and I was looking at the roster at Maryland too. They had guys that still had a couple years left. They were playing the same position that I would be playing. Because I remember at Duke, they had Gene Banks. He was there, and he was playing my position. And plus, there was another guy, I forget his name. And then you had, at Maryland, you had Buck Williams, and I think Albert King were there. So I was like looking at the rosters too. I said, yes, it would be nice to go to these schools, but you want to when you sign a scholarship to a school, you want to have the opportunity to play right away, at least compete for a job. Not only I'm gonna have to wait out my time because this guy's maybe a junior, something like a senior. No, I didn't want to do that. And the fact that I did really like West Virginia too. And how Coach Catlett, he approached things and how he presented it to me, and I started thinking, and then I talked to my mother and father and said, I'm going to WVU. So he came down. I'll never forget this day. I forget what day it was. I remember it was like a cloudy day. He came down on a helicopter. And they landed on a football field, and then he drove to the high school. And my mother and father were there sitting beside me when I signed the letter of intent to go to WVU.
What? He flew in on a helicopter?
Yes.
What the heck? That's one of the
Yeah.
old timers.
Yeah, he came down in a helicopter. Yeah. And a car was there to pick him up to take him to the high school. Wow, oh wow. It was like one of those days that you never thought you would ever live. And the fact that my parents were still alive and to be a part of that, be by my side, when I did sign their letter of intent to attend WVU.
Did you have to pinch yourself after you saw Coach Catlett, come in on a helicopter and you're like, okay, I need to pinch myself. I need to wake up that I can sign my letter of intent.
Yeah, it was like basically something that you basically see like in a movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You didn't think this was real, especially, a kid coming from a small community, then all of a sudden, hey, having an opportunity now to go to a major university and to play basketball, something that you worked for basically the whole of your life, and the fact that the guy that was going to be coaching you, he's landing right on the football field, and then he's coming to the school, and we're sitting in the library at Northfork High School, and I'm signing my name on a scholarship to attend the WVU. It's like deja vu in type of ways too. It's like so unreal to me, to be able to like think like that. Like, wow, me, a kid, small kid, coming from a town of 1,000 and having the opportunity to play major college basketball, even in my home state.
That might, I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you at all, Russell. I'm going to be very, very honest with you. That might be the greatest story of all time. The fact that the fact that Catlett came down on a helicopter and came to your signing day is one of the all-time stories. Holy cow! Thank you so much for sharing that. That's
You're welcome. You're
awesome.
welcome. I'm glad you brought it up because certain things you forget. If no one really asks you about certain things, because it's still there, but you don't think about it as often. Especially as you get older in life too.
Yeah, I mean that's just you just don't see that nowadays. Let me say it like that. You just don't see that nowadays.
No, it was like very personal. It's like when you see people do that. Me being a kid, at the time, it's like they say you're young and you're still dumb. You're still learning things. Which is true. I was just still a kid. I just wanted to play basketball, and the fact that this opportunity arrived in me, and thank God for that too. Without him being in my life, and the fact the support of my family, it's like I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And and I think about it, I say, wow, I come from a very small place, like I've said before. Now I'm living in another country, and it had all to do with the people that were in my life, and basically it's part of basketball. That's why I ended up over in Sweden too.
I want to talk about your first season at WVU because you come from Northfork, about 3.5 hours away from your hometown. You go to when you go to Morgantown, but the freshman class that you came in with pretty much comprised of you and a guy that I don't think a lot of people know about. I could be wrong, but a guy from Youngstown, Ohio. His name's
Greg
Greg
Jones.
Greg Jones. He did a few things at the Grand Lane Institution. He did a few things. I mean, he had a couple records. He was okay. He was a good ball player. What was he like?
Greg he was very fun. He was very fun, very energetic, man. He, him and I roomed together all the time too. So
Really?
yeah, yes. No, he was a very nice person. I really I really enjoyed Greg, being a team. And not only that, we're off the court too. And we always pushed each other because we played the whole year round. We did not stop playing. We did not take time off. We played, we played, we played. And then when it was time for like preseason, we practiced 3 hours too. Yes, 3 hours practice, we practiced. So we were already in shape when we started our preseason. And so practice of us, sure it was tough, but we were ready for it. It wasn't like, okay, you take the summer off, okay, you wait. No, we never did that because we knew, hey, it's easy to stay in shape and to be ready for this preseason because it's going to be tough too. It's going to be tough because he's going to Coach Catlett is going to play with your mind too. He's going to see who wants it the most. And we practiced hard, hard. It was like I told you earlier when I played in Northfork, the practices were harder than the games. It was tough. It was like blood and sweat sometimes. It was battles. It was battles. That's how tough it was. But it was out of respect. We were competing, we were doing what we were pushing each other. How far you can go. Okay, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do this. Come on. And then even though we play 5-on-5, we're still pushing each other. We're talking to each other. We talk a little junk to each other, stuff like that. But that's how to get you motivated too. Get your head in again, get focused. This is what we're trying to do. All right. And when Saturday or whatever day it was of the week that we played games on, we were ready. We were ready. Which was crazy too, is the fact that we practiced 3 hours. 3 hours. And the fact is that during the holidays, we practiced twice in one day.
Oh.
Practice in the morning, then in the afternoon. And then sometimes in between, we might have had film sessions because there was no school then. Because then, we could practice all that. Then we had, film sessions, all that stuff like that. It was very demanding, but then you got used to it because it became a routine. You knew what to expect of you. And the fact that you had to go to class and all that other stuff, but then you had basketball. Around 4 or 5 o'clock, we were in the Coliseum getting ready for that 3-hour practice.
So I forgot to mention this earlier, but you pretty much spent the majority of your basketball career without a 3-point line. I mean, if somebody wanted to score 3 points, they had to do the traditional 3-point play. So
Exactly.
So whenever that 3-point line was introduced, was it just like, what's that? Because, looking back, simply going back to the YouTube video when Northfork played Winfield, there was no 3-point line in the Coliseum. But then once you got to your senior year, it was brought in. So I'm curious, when the 3-point line was first introduced and implemented in the college basketball, did it take time for people to realize how important or vital it could be to use, or was it just one of those things where it was just brand new for everybody? It was just a learning tool.
Actually, it was basically a basic 18-foot jump shot. Because, remember the 3-point line, it came in part of the top of the key.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was basically a normal jump shot, especially if you played on the wing or if you played guard or something like that. So it was nothing. We never really thought about that. We just played the game. Okay, if you had a shot, you were open right there, you take it if you know you can hit it, or at least had the opportunity of hitting it. But it was nothing that was like in our repertoire, okay, like today's game, it's like it's 3-point shots all the time. It's crazy. But during the time that I played, it was never like that. We did it the old-fashioned way, like you said earlier. You get the 2 points and you get the and one.
Yep. Well, let's move forward to your senior year. And again, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
Looking at your senior season, I think one of the biggest games in Mountaineer basketball history came on a night that I think a lot of people will never forget. February 27th, 1983. You guys go up against number 1 UNLV, coached by Jerry Tarkanian. And looking at the roster that they have, I mean, their top 3 scorers were Sidney Green, Larry Anderson, and Paul Brzovich. I mean, looking at that game, what was the preparation like going up against the number 1 team in the country like UNLV?
Well, we knew they were called the running rebels, where they wanted to run. And we love to run too, if the opportunity presented itself. But we knew we just had to play good sound defense on them. And the fact that we had the crowd as the sixth man too. It was crazy in the Coliseum when we played. And the fact that we knew if we could stay close to them, we could beat them. We never thought that we were going to lose the game. We always came to every game that we're going to win. It doesn't make a difference who it was. You always have a chance to win. We always say, hey, we can beat this thing. We can beat this thing. If we come with our A game and we're all firing at all cylinders at the same time, we can beat this team, and which we were. And the crowd, it gave us even extra energy because the Las Vegas, they were a very big team too. Sidney Green, he was like 6'10", and he was pretty big too. I'll never forget that. The fact that I went up was going to shoot, I was going to dunk the ball, and he pushed me in the back, but he got called for the foul. And I was turning around and looked at him. I think it was out of frustration too, because I think they were knowing that they were going to lose this game because we had the number. Because I think they came in, if I'm not mistaken, I think they might have lost before they played us, if I'm not mistaken. It was something, it was kind of strange, but then they came in, and then when they saw all those fans, because they'd never been to West Virginia, they didn't, especially be playing in the Coliseum, which is like unreal, because when I first played my first game there in college, it's totally different when you played in high school. But when I played in college there, and the field, the student section was packed, which was right across the bench from where we sat. It was crazy. And what we did to get ourselves motivated for not only just that game, for all the other games, we started doing a different thing. Instead of going in the back way to come down to the locker room, we came down to the to the student section, and they went crazy.
So
They went crazy.
You guys came down through the student section?
Yeah. Most of us did. Most of the guys did.
How about that?
We did that. I was like, well, yeah, we're going they're here for us. That's how we thought. Greg, myself, and a couple other guys, we all came down. And the fact that, we came early too, because, you couldn't dunk in the warm-ups.
Mm-hmm.
So what we would do, we'd go in and get changed, we'd stretch a little bit, and then we'd put on a little bit of show for them before the game would start. And then we had our manager. He was always on the lookout for the referees because when they were going to come, he would tell us, okay, you guys got to stop now. So we would stop, and then we would go in. So we were already hyped up. We were ready. It was crazy.
How about that? I mean, that's...
And the fact that we had the Mountaineer, and he used to shoot off his gun in the Coliseum, which was crazy.
Yeah. So you were right. You are right when you said earlier that UNLV came into that game having lost its first game of the season. I mean, they took one to the chin, and they played Cal State Fullerton. They lost that game 86-78. They come into the Coliseum, they lose 87-78 against you all. So yeah, they were ticked. They thought they could have bounced back, but they ran into the old gold and blue that night.
Yeah, we were ready for them. I just always said during my time, if we'd have really had, because during that time, you basically need a center. Because basically the bigger teams, the major teams, they had centers. And the centers were pretty good. And I just said, if we would have had a center, which was, the centers that we had, they were okay. But, the fact that, we needed someone else a little extra at that time to be able to come back. Because I wasn't a center. I played a lot with my back to the basket my last 2 years of college because of the fact that we didn't really have like a center. Now, in a garden, guys were maybe 4 or 5 inches taller than me and probably weighed 20 pounds more.
How about that? That's crazy.
But that's what we did. That's how we beat those teams too sometimes, because we used our quickness and we ran a lot. We ran as much as we could. Like I said, in the earlier, we were already in shape before the season started. It was like basketball, basketball, basketball. I don't think we ever took a day off of playing. I think we played basically every day.
So looking at your stat line from that game, you score 14 points, 4 rebounds, you shoot 56% from the field and 50% from the charity stripe. So a good game. I would definitely attest to that. It was a very good game on your part. You played 31 minutes as well. So wow. So let me ask you this then. You pretty much you touched on it, did not really went into full detail. So I'll ask the question. Similarities between playing in the WVU Coliseum whenever you were playing in state title games compared to playing in college? Were there similarities, or was it just you just playing basketball?
Well, it's still the same floor,
Yeah.
but the atmosphere changes because the fact that now this is college. This is the step up from playing high school basketball, especially playing a championship game of high school basketball and playing against a major college team in the Coliseum. And the fact was that the crowd itself, they were there for us. And the fact that you see the student section already full, when you come, you haven't even changed yet. You come out on the floor and you can hear the roar of the crowd while you're in the dressing room getting ready to come out and take the floor and start warming up. It was crazy. It was crazy. And like, you said earlier that we felt like rock stars when we were at Northfork High School. We felt more, not like rock stars when we were in college, but it was like something that was in between. It was a different level. It was like a high that, wow, this is what we worked for. And to be able to like feel that roar, the crowd, when you came out on the floor, and it was crazy. It was crazy. It was really crazy. It was something that I'll never forget, to be able to do that and to play in front of like 14, 15,000 people.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. It was wild. It's like, because, like I said earlier, when I went to Northfork, our home court was maybe like 400 or 500 people. And then we moved and started playing the Armories, which was to like 2,000. But then when I came to college, well, hello, God. And to be able to play, because you know how the Coliseum is, you walk down into it.
Yeah.
It's like a spaceship, it's crazy, especially when it's at nighttime when it's lit up. It's crazy. I don't think there's a better place to play basketball there than the WVU Coliseum. And I played in some other places too. I think the Coliseum, along with the Spectrum at the time in Philadelphia, are my favorite place, plus Madison Square Garden. Those three right there. My home court and those two that I mentioned too.
Those are great answers. Great answers. You guys probably felt like the police. I mean, the police were very big in 1983. You guys felt like the police. Just anytime you guys got on campus, they're like, "Oh, look, it's the basketball team," aka the police. Every breath you take.
It was crazy. It was like, it was crazy.
Little Roxanne action as well.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm 22 years old. I know my rock band. Every little thing she does is magic. I mean, come on, I can play. Let's go.
No, it was wild. It was wild. But it's like it was great to be able to, reflecting back on that stuff. It's like it was a privilege.
Mm-hmm.
Something you can never take for granted. And I like to say, everything happens for a reason. And whether it's good or bad, hopefully everything for the most part is good. But life is not always at the top. You have to experience the downs, the lows as well as the highs, to be able to appreciate where you are at this point in life. And to be able to talk about this after 40 something years, which is crazy. And the fact that, I'm living in another country now. And I've been doing this for some time too, been living over here. Which I never thought that I would be doing. I thought, okay, if I was like maybe be in a foreign country, it would probably maybe be England or somewhere like that. Speaking English, but British English. But then I'm living in Sweden, speaking Swedish, and and teaching in the school system.
You know what's crazy? And again, I love this basketball talk, but I always have to incorporate pop culture at some point. So, it's just funny looking at your senior year of college at WVU. I just looked up some of the popular movies from 1983, and I'm a big throwback movies kind of guy. So I'm looking at this list. I mean, you got The Outsiders, very popular movie, got a star for a lot of famous actors. Scarface, Al Pacino, Risky Business, War Games with uh, with a lot of young actors in that as well. Vacation with Chevy Chase. That was, I mean, you were living in the golden years, my friend. You were living in the golden years. A lot of great music, a lot of great movies as well. I mean, life was good in the '80s for you. It seemed like.
You know what? I have a colleague that I work with. We talk about the '80s and the '90s, and he mentioned that during the '80s and part of the '90s was some of the better times. If you're looking at how the world is now, what all is going on.
Yep, I agree. I do agree. Well, let's we got to talk about your professional career to an extent, and when you look at your professional career after WVU, you go try with the Bucks, as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, and didn't really work out. Then you realize playing overseas would be the best for you. You know, your story's so unique because you've adjusted to so many different circumstances throughout your life. And I would assume Sweden was just another one of those things where you learned, you adjusted, and you continued. Am I correct when I say that?
Yes, yes, yes.
So,
You're very correct.
so, so when you look at professional basketball overseas, you know, how different is it, or what do people not know about basketball over in Eastern and Western Europe?
During the time when I came here, you know, basketball. Well, Sweden basketball was okay, but the guys on the team didn't really know what it took. The extra. If you want to win championships, or if you want to win in general. Like I said earlier, it's about sacrifices you have to make.
Mhm.
You can't be out in the middle of the night partying and all this stuff like this. You got to get your rest. You can't work hard during the week and throw it all the way on a Friday night or whatever like that. Because then you're starting basically from zero again. And some of my teammates, they always ask me, Russell, you don't drink. I said, no, I don't drink. You know why? I get paid for how I get paid. What's the word that you like to use? If I don't take care of my body, I don't get paid because then I can't perform at the highest level. And I knew that. And I never thought about alcohol. I thought about the fact that, okay, I'm playing professional. I'm doing something that I dreamed about basically all my life, even from the fifth grade up. Now I'm getting able to live the dream that I worked so hard for. And I'm in another country, being able to do that. I'm not going to throw it away. This is how I make my living. At the same time, there's not a better living in the world that you have, being able to do what you dream about all your life and to be able to do it, which is crazy, when I think about it to this day. I've been very fortunate, to have the opportunity to play in another country and to do the things that I want to do and still living in the same country and still enjoying my life as of today.
So I'll conclude on this note, and I think this is the perfect way to end this remarkable story that you have unlocked for us. And this was truly a treat of mine. But I want to get your I want to get your final thoughts when you look back on your ultra successful basketball career, from winning 4 state titles at Northfork to playing at WVU under Gale Catlett, beating the number 1 team in UNLV, and then ultimately finishing your career in Sweden, how would you best characterize your basketball story?
I would characterize it. I did it the only way that I know how is to work hard and to sacrifice in order to get what you want in life and to never forget where you come from. You're not only with the coaches that I had along the way, from say elementary to junior high, high school, college, even in my professional life, and the people that I met along the way. It's like I've learned a lot in my soon to be 62 years of my life. And it's due to the fact that having respect for other people, not only thinking about yourself, because the world doesn't exist around me. This is only a portion of my life. But you have memories from that. But life goes on after that. And the fact that, you have to be happy with yourself, when you like finish playing sports, because sometimes it's hard for some guys to like let it go, still trying to live their dream. You know, I knew my time was up because, when you start getting injuries where you can't come back from, or it takes you long to come back from, your body is telling you something.
Mhm.
It's time. You're like, okay, you've done it. You got to let it go sometime. And the fact that, hey, I want to like live the rest of my life, being able to walk and stuff like that, instead of like playing another year, and you never know. So I started listening to my mind, my brain was telling me, okay, you got to stop now. You can't do it anymore. Even if you want to do it, your mind is telling you, hey, I want to continue, but you can't do that. But you got to be more sensible with yourself. You got to weigh the pros and cons of life, and the fact that okay, I can't do it anymore. I have to do something else. This is how I got into the teaching field, and the fact that I'm very fortunate to have the opportunity to have done the things I've done in my life, knowing, like I said earlier, where I came from, coming from a small community. It's not so many people have the opportunity to do some of the things I've done. I've been very blessed to have the opportunity to still be able to talk about what I've done. And thankful for you giving me the opportunity to talk about some of the things, to go down memory lane, which I'm very appreciative of it. And maybe in the future, maybe you never know, maybe we can talk a little bit later, which I'm very thankful for that, because I never imagined this, okay, I played basketball. I know people, but I don't do it, to get remembered. I did it because I love the game. And if you remember things, then that's fine. That's a plus. That's a bonus right there. But like I said earlier, I'm just being very thankful and very blessed to have the opportunity, not only in the basketball aspect, but other things that are in my life, because basketball has opened doors for me to be able to do other things too.
That's well said. That is very well said. And again, I'm very, very appreciative of you joining me, being able to, again, unlock some of the greatest stories I've heard. I mean, these stories that you've shared, the memories you've shared. I'm just glad that you opened up and shared this with not only myself but to my audience as well. So I very much am appreciative of that.
I'm glad to have the opportunity to really be able to talk about things because, being so far away, and, it's like I've talked to my wife about certain things that have happened, in my life, especially with the basketball. And when I showed her the championship game from 1979, she said, "Where are you?" That's you right there. Like I said earlier, with her, wow, hey, okay, it was like flashbacks. But you know what? It's all fun. We go through different things in life, and like I said earlier, sports is on a part of it. And I'm very thankful because of sports, because sports has made me into a better person. You're not only, thinking about yourself, you have to be a team player. And that's like in life, you got to do that too. You got to make sacrifices. It's not all about you. It doesn't all evolve around you. There's always other people too along the way. And you never forget, like I said, where you come from and be thankful to have the opportunities that you have and appreciate them in life because life is very short. We never know. Things can happen at any time. It's like we talked about earlier, with COVID, which is still going on, and we never know where it's going to end. And like I said earlier, it's what you have to like adjust your life to certain things, which is all the time. The older you get, hopefully we get wiser and understand things in a better way. But sometimes you never know. Depends on who you are, and you cannot be stubborn. You got to be open-minded about certain things in life too, not just humble, because it's not only you or me. There's other people around too that we're all in this together, whether we want to agree to it or not. We are. If we can all come to that in our senses, then I think we have a chance, hopefully, of this world being a better place, not only for ourselves, for our kids and for our grandkids. Because you want to leave something better. You don't want to leave something worse.
I think it's the perfect way to cap a perfect episode. Russell, thank you for your time. It was a pleasure and an honor speaking with you. And have a great rest of your day. And we will talk soon.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And God bless you, man.
Thank you, sir. That will conclude episode 100B of Hoops Across the Mountain State. Again, a special thanks to Russel Todd for joining me on this special occasion for this milestone we have reached in this podcast. And as always, you can follow me on Twitter at Taylor_Kennedy7 for all the latest about this podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube as well. And you can find all episodes there as well. Thank you all for listening. I hope you all enjoyed this and stay safe.